When we think about the impact of parasites on the health and performance of cattle, the number one impact that we see is reduced feed intake. And when we think about that, reduced feed intake means reduced nutrient intake. Not only is nutrient intake reduced, but nutrient absorption is reduced as well. And that's going to impact performance, whether that be growth, milk production, reproduction. On top of that, internal parasites are a drain on the immune system. The immune system is going to try to combat the parasites, and because of that, the immune system is occupied trying to combat the parasites so they can't combat viruses and bacteria as well as they otherwise would. There was a study done at Iowa State University several years ago where the researchers looked at all of the technologies available from the animal health industry and their impact on health and performance and economics of the cow-calf enterprise. And what they found was deworming brought back $201 per cow-calf pair to the cow-calf enterprise. And when they looked at all of the animal health technologies available to the cow-calf enterprise, the total impact of using those technologies was $274 per cow-calf pair. So when you think about that, 201 of the $274 available through the use of animal health technologies came from deworming alone. It shows that internal parasites are a big drain on the cow-calf operation, and deworming can have a big impact on that. We often think we can see cattle that are affected by parasites, and at times we can. If there's clinical parasitism, we can see cattle that potentially are losing body condition, but the bigger impact is subclinical parasitism. That's where the cattle look fine. We're not noticing any out-of-condition cows. We're not noticing calves that don't appear to be gaining. But when we get to weaning those calves and we get to breeding those cows the next year, we may see some reductions in weaning weights and breeding percentage. So it's important to remember that we can't just visually assess cattle out on pasture or in a dry lot for parasitism. The best way to assess parasitism and worm load is by doing a fecal egg count reduction test, or a FECRT. And what a FECRT is it's collecting 20 fecal samples, and they can be random fecal samples off of a pen floor or a pasture, or they can be collected from individual animals. And we'll do this before cattle are dewormed. So that's going to give us an initial baseline of what the parasite load is of those cattle. And then we go ahead and deworm those cattle and come back 14 days later and sample the same group. So we want to sample within a production group, whether that's cows, calves, bulls, replacement heifers, incoming feedlot cattle, and then compare those initial egg counts with those egg counts from 14 days after deworming to assess how well that dewormer worked. And what we're targeting is a 90% reduction in fecal egg count. If that egg reduction falls below 90%, those cattle are not effectively dewormed. We at Merck Animal Health provide fecal egg count reduction test kits. They are free for producers and veterinarians to use. They have sample bags, they have freezer packs for shipping, they have a prepaid address label for shipping. So everything you need to assess worm load of cattle and also assess the efficacy of that deworming program. Parasite resistance is an issue that often comes up when we talk about dewormers, and at Merck Animal Health we maintain our fecal egg count reduction database, which is the largest database of its kind, assessing the ongoing efficacy of all types of dewormers that are used in the beef cattle industry. And what we found is any of the porons and injectables, they're about 50% effective. So these are your avermectin type products, the macrocyclic lactone type products. They're not as effective as they once were. What we found with Safeguard, whether that is Safeguard Drench or Panicure Drench or any of the Safeguard products such as Safeguard Cubes, Safeguard Blocks, Safeguard Mineral, or the products such as 0.5% and 1.96, is that the fecal egg count reduction is 95% or greater, and in a lot of cases it's 99% or even 100% in many cases. We're often really good at getting cattle dewormed going out to pasture in the springtime. We're good at getting cattle dewormed when they're coming off of pasture in the fall. But when you think about worms and parasites, they live on pasture. Only 5 to 10% of worms are actually in the animal. 90+% are actually out on pasture. So as soon as we put cattle out on pasture, they're picking up worms. And those worms can begin to cause damage in the gut, cause reductions in performance, whether that be growth, reproduction, milk production, be a drain on the immune system. Not only that, but they're reproducing as well. So those worms are shedding eggs back onto the pasture, and the whole life cycle begins again. So that's why the non-handling products are very useful for pasture deworming. They're all highly effective at reducing fecal egg counts, and they're very easy to use out on pasture. Cattle eat them and they're dewormed. It's always important to work with your local veterinarian because they know what's going on locally. They know the trends as far as disease is concerned. And in terms of deworming and parasitism, they understand that life cycle. So working with your local veterinarian, having that local knowledge and knowing what products work in your area is very important.